shall not be moved. We shall not, we shall not be moved.
If you lived in 1950s in Baltimore, Maryland, you would soon learn that there were many stores who maintained written and unwritten laws of segregation in their establishments. For example, Reed's Drug Store, located at the corner of Howard and Lexington Streets, and the Northwood Shopping Center location in Baltimore, Maryland, was one of those stores. The main store in downtown Baltimore, Maryland, was the central focus of conflict and controversy of sit-ins in 1955. Reed's was originally designed by two prominent Baltimore architects, Smith and Mays, and owned by William Reed. Later, it was purchased from Reed by Arthur Natans in 1899. Natans grew the Reed's chain to over 40 locations by the 1930s. However, the conflict began when Reed's Drug Store, located in downtown Baltimore, refused to serve African Americans at their lunch counter in 1955. Like many other downtown lunch counters in the early 1950s, Reed's Drug Store maintained a strict policy of racial segregation. As a result, Morgan students decided to hold a sit-in at this location. Many people believe the students at the Woolworth lunch counter, located in Greensboro, North Carolina, were the first students to participate in a sit-in demonstration for civil rights. Not true. Students from Morgan State became quietly known as the first to initiate a sit-in demonstration in history. This act became the catalyst for sit-ins across the country.
Hello, my name is Dr. John D. Hayes. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1947, and I remember very vividly in 1955 the Morgan State sit-in in Baltimore. My brother attended Douglas High School, and he had just received a scholarship to attend Morgan State. At the time, we lived in Cherry Hill, and he had to take the number 37 bus from Cherry Hill uptown to Douglas High School. And he would inform us what was going on at Reed's Drug Store at that point in time. When he received a scholarship to attend, I remember reading in the newspaper the success of that Morgan State College sit-in. I also remember at the time when I attended Baltimore City College that there were other department stores that seemed to be having issues relative to eating structures, such as Hoschel's, the Head Company, Stewart's, and even Bragger Gutman's downtown. But most important, I remember the Reed's Drug Store most personally, simply because in 1974, I was with ADT Security Systems, and I was assigned the Reed Drug Store account. And at that point in time, I remember my first initial contact with the security director. It was kind of interesting. He and I had set up a meeting, and subsequent to the discussion over the telephone, we met for the first time. He came in the lobby and then asked for John Hayes, and of course I got up, and he was astonished that it was me, simply because I sounded white over the telephone. At any rate, we became very good friends, very good associates, until the mid-'80s when Rite Aid bought out Reed's Drug Store. The headquarters for Rite Aid at that point in time was located on Gwynns Falls near Warwick Avenue. I remember many trips back and forth, but I also remember the history associated with Morgan and the structure that they had in place for different types of demonstrations. For an example, I remember when I returned from Vietnam, and as a veteran attending Morgan, we had staged sittings in Annapolis. We marched on Annapolis to attain university status. I remember in my poli-sci class that I did some research on Morgan's history relative to sit-ins, or at least marches, on Annapolis. And in 1947, I discovered that Morgan also had marched on Annapolis to obtain funds. So there's great history relative to the two subjects of Morgan State and, of course, Reed's Drugstore. So from a personal perspective, it was my enjoyment to have been a part of history, and most important, the opportunity to share with you my experience. Thank you.
On January 20th, 1955, Morgan State students simultaneously staged a sit-in at both locations of Reed's at both Lexington and Howard Street and Northwood. As a result, an unnamed Reed's official called Morgan State and pleaded with the school officials to call the protesters off because the store was losing business. Within hours, a Reed's official announced that Reed's drugstores would end segregated lunch counters at all of their locations. This conflict allowed a compromise from the students as well as the establishment, but even greater, initiated a chain of future successful sit-ins to follow. Reed's drugstores are no longer in Baltimore. However, the downtown Baltimore location still remains visible and intact on the outside. The inside has been demolished. There is currently a controversy over whether to raise this building for development or preserve it and turn it into a civil rights museum. Regardless of the decision, it remains a catalyst for civil rights in American history.
You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lift every voice and sing.
Lift every